This is Golden Years, a roadmap to navigate retirement with Mark Cordner, the podcast.
Now, I recently came across this study from our friends at Allianz, Mark, and I got to tell you, these stats, stop me in my tracks here. They found almost half of investors do not have an income plan for retirement. Get this, they say 48% are worried they will live too frugally and not enjoy their retirement. And then another 27% report hearing their advisor discuss this topic. So either way, these are not good numbers. This is like you're starting off to fail without a plan for retirement here. And not to mention, I thought income planning was like job one of retirement planning.
Well, it should be, but that it hasn't been historically. I'm really glad you cite that. I think those numbers are off, personally. I believe that a far larger percentage of people have not done income planning. You know, they do have maybe a 401k and they think that, oh, well, that's my plan. I'm just going to live off of that at however I need and just cross my fingers and hope I don't run out of money. That's not a plan. That's a wish. So we've got to get together and talk about retirement planning is really about income maximization. How do we keep what we have so the government doesn't get it? How do we sequence money, understanding that different sources of money are taxed differently in retirement? How do we protect it from the variety of risk like inflation and health care and long-term care that can destroy even a well-made plan? You know, you've got to have risk management guardrails built in there. Most people have not done that. And I would encourage people to make that priority number one, as you say. Again, it's not about how much money you have. It's about how much you get to keep and how much you can actually spend. It's not about assets that you can't eat. It's about the income that can be converted into groceries. And so we have to look at all assets. Most of their money is in their house and they don't have enough in retirement planning. And so maybe we have to think differently about housing or about tools for maximizing the equity within the home. There's a variety of things we can do there where people are sometimes asset rich, but cash and income poor. And so we have to think differently. We've got to get that stuff out on paper and regularly review it. That's what income planning is about. And most financial planners per se, or financial advisors, really are not income planners. The last 50 years they've spent focusing on how do they accumulate the most money possible for you. And so their whole pitch for most of the financial community is, hey, we can get you 1 or 2% greater rate of return than whatever you're getting with your current advisor. That's their whole pitch to get you over, is we can get you a little sexier return. I would say that's the wrong conversation to have entirely. The real question should be, how do we convert your current assets into income that you can outlive, that's protected, and that's tax advantaged? That, at the end of the day, is what we need. Income you can outlive, that's tax advantaged and protected. Those are the three criteria we use in our firm for true income planning. And I would estimate that only 5 or 10% of the financial professionals out there in the world are really doing income planning anymore. It's catching on. More and more are getting involved in this and specializing in it. But that's really what retirement is about. It's about income planning.
I just want to stay on this just for a second, because there might be people listening going, what do you mean? I have a plan. I'd give to my 401k every month. Social Security, hopefully, God willing, will be there in some capacity. And, well, I already know I'm going to get some inheritance. So that should be good. Otherwise, I've got it all handled. True or false, Mark? This is not an income plan.
False. That is not an income plan. That's a wish and a dream. Yeah, again, just having assets does not mean that you're going to have sufficient income, because those assets have to be converted to income. And just having, for example, tax-deferred savings doesn't mean you're going to get to keep all that money, because a quarter to a third of it could actually belong to Uncle Sam. And until you pay Uncle Sam off, he's going to be part of your life. And he's the senior partner in that relationship. He's not the junior partner. He gets to determine how much of that plan he gets to keep at some future date. He gets to create all the rules on how much you can contribute, when you can take it out, if you're going to be penalized for taking the wrong amount or insufficient amounts out. And so I'm not saying that's a bad deal. I am saying that it's a deal that we have to understand better. And so planning income is much more strategic than that. We need to look at how do we maximize Social Security, how do we maximize any pension that may be available through employers or through the government, or we have to ask the question, do we need to create a private pension so you have income you can't outlive? And then how do we deal with inflation eroding the value of that income? Because it's not a one-time plan that you set and forget. You've got to revisit that, because over a period of time, certainly historically speaking, every 24 years, your money is worth half as much as it was when you started the income plan. That's assuming a 3% inflation rate. So if you're going to live 25 years or so in retirement, the way many retirees will, 50% of married couples are expected to have at least one spouse make it to age 95. So if you're in that situation with longevity in mind, then you're going to need twice as much money in the future as you needed when you started. And so planning for inflation is something I've found that most people have not addressed. They kind of cross their fingers and say, well, the stock market will take care of me. Well, the stock market probably shouldn't be where all of your money is. A good portion of your money should be out of that, totally safe, again, creating income. Part of it perhaps in the market, but we've got to integrate these different sources of retirement savings so that, again, we can maximize the income that comes out of it so that we don't run short of money before we run out of time. That's really the rub on this whole thing is if you live too long, what are the options? I mean, you either move in with your kids or you die, right? That's maybe a hard question because some of us would rather die than move in with the kids. But, that's the proposition that many people are facing here in the future.
Yeah.
Is I've had hard conversations with widowed women who in their mid-70s, we've had to talk about going out and finding work because they didn't stick with the income plan we had created. It's not uncommon for people who live alone like that in retirement to maybe start spending time online with, and sometimes that becomes gambling. Sometimes that becomes an addiction to Amazon. Amazon's too convenient, frankly. And so people sometimes do this, there's this behavioral
They're
economics.
bored, usually. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like they're satisfying this craving and they spend too much. Well, that's where an advisor can help, is the advisor can come in and coach you well before you run short of money on how not to run short of money, because otherwise the advisor's having that hard conversation with you about what kind of part-time work can we do now that you're 75.
Which, that's terrible. Nobody wants to go work when they're 70 or 75. And you're addressing really the elephant in the room here is the number one fear is running out of money. So if we're putting together, this income plan that you talk about, and we're talking about maximizing our income options and such, then we're going to be able to avoid a lot of that.
Yeah, we have a saying here in my office that it's let's get real or let's not play. Because if we're not going to be completely honest with ourselves, then we're really just we're really just hallucinating about the future. We've got to have a vision of what we want to have happen, and that vision has to actually be implemented so that we have traction in our day-to-day life, because vision without traction is hallucination, as a friend of mine has said, and so accurately. So yeah, let's take it out of the clouds, let's get real or let's not play. And I would invite people to come get real with us, because there's absolutely risk out there that most Americans are totally unaware of. And when it hits you unexpectedly, market corrections. Like I had a guy come in, he actually came off this radio show and he came in, wonderful guy. We really hit it off well. But he's got about 95% of his money in Tesla. And he came to us because he wanted an income plan. And we created a strategy that would show him and his wife how not to ever outlast their money. But then he went back and said, I'm going to wait a little bit longer. I want to see if this Tesla won't keep going up more. I think it's going to keep going up more. Now, I'm not knocking him, but what I'm saying is there's an addictive quality to the market. And again, with 95% of his money in Tesla, he may get spanked at some point. And then we're not going to have the same options that we have now. And so we have to learn to think differently. So again, I'm not knocking anyone. What I'm trying to do is encourage people to take control of their futures in a manner that's safe and predictable, so they can truly live the lives that they want.
For those listening going, all right, Mark knows what he's talking about. He's been doing this for decades. I totally get it. He's super smart, super informed. But what is he going to tell me or give me or show me that I can't go anywhere else and get? What makes you and the team there at Golden Years Financial stand out?
Oh, that's always a loaded question. It makes me self-conscious every time. But I think there's some fundamental differences in the way we do business. There truly is the recognition that this is sacred money. I don't use that term lightly. We really look at people's retirement savings as sacred money, with the acknowledgement that people often can't go back to work. And so we have to look at strategies that safeguard. And so we consider ourselves risk managers more than what some people would call money managers, who are simply trying to get you a greater rate of return. We're going to talk about all those risks that people don't want to talk about, things like long-term care, which is the number one unfunded social and medical crisis of our time. People haven't dealt with that. We're going to deal with hard conversations in a manner that hopefully is not painful or hard. I mean, usually people are extremely grateful to us. I get thank you notes from people regularly. I got some European chocolates a couple of weeks ago, which was really nice.
Ooh, nice.
She knows that I love Europe, but anyway, people recognize the sincerity of where we're coming from. We truly consider this sacred money. We focus exclusively on retirement planning. We can help your kids. We can do some things like that, that are just little investment plans and all. But really, we're focused on that cohort of people between the age of 50 and 75 who are primarily transitioning into retirement and need to have the security that they want. It's interesting. People wonder, what financial professional should we talk to about retirement? And the certified financial planners are wonderful people who have devoted time and energy to get that particular professional designation. But I had read that I can't remember if it's 7 or 11. I think it's 11% of their educational program focuses on retirement. The rest is on debt management and other things like that frankly, I don't really deal with. So it makes them very helpful at certainly a general financial planning matters. But when it comes to retirement planning and specifically income planning, my educational background is different than that. I've focused on those educational programs that are entirely retirement based. And so we can bring broader perspective there when it comes to behavioral economics, when it comes to healthcare planning, when it comes to risk management. And so, come visit with us. If we sound, like our philosophies may match yours, we offer this free Good Fit meeting. That's what we call it, is the Good Fit meeting, to see I'm not good for everyone. And I'm fine with that. I'm a big boy. I can handle that, but people really need to come see if there's a difference between the way we talk and we walk, because we walk the very talk. I do what I teach. So come visit with us and see if we're a good fit.
One of my favorite shows, and I'll watch it anytime it's on, it's in reruns constantly, is the show Friends. Mark, are you a fan? Were you a fan? Do you watch it?
My twin brother's a big fan of that. I was in the library at college, when that became so popular, and then I was in the early days of my career. So I've seen snippets of it that are sure funny, but I never really got hooked on the show like so many of my friends. And as I mentioned, even my twin brother, who just loved it. He and his wife enjoyed that together. But they sure have some funny characters there. Matt LeBlanc cracks me up.
Yeah, Matt LeBlanc, he played the famous Joey. That was always kind of the comedian of the group, always doing something silly. And listen, Mark, I'll give you a pass. You've been busy, right? You've been building a business and stuff, but you need to get on the Friends wagon, okay? It's on reruns. It's all over the place. Check it out. And at age 57 here, actor Matt LeBlanc, again known for playing Joey, is showing absolutely no interest in working again. But good news for him, he doesn't really have to. He actually makes $20 million in residuals just from Friends. Forget all the other projects that he's done. And these are some remarks from Matt. Listen to this.
My plan was 10 years of Friends, and I did 2 years of Joey. And then I said, right, I'm going to take a year off. I want to take a year off and just relax. I had such a good time. I said, I'm going to take another one. And then that one was even better. So I said, maybe one more. And then it turned into 5 or 6 years. My favorite thing in the world to do, like my absolute favorite thing in the world to do, is nothing. I'm great at it.
Doing nothing. And I think we all would agree, if we had $20 million of residuals coming in, and you don't have to do anything. Can you imagine? I can't even think about that life, Mark. What about you?
That is hard to relate to, and it's interesting. As I mentioned, he was my favorite character. I didn't realize that was his attitude on this. I know I hadn't seen him around so much, but I think that's wonderful because he does have the means, so he can kind of self-determine how he spends his time. But I think we all have that, perhaps on a much smaller scale, but we all have that because the real question is, how much is enough? Entertainment, how much is enough? You fill in the blanks. One of my clients is a physician in Colorado, and she's a single woman who I admire greatly. She's actually the client of one of my local clients, and I haven't even met her in person, but we've had all these interactions over the phone and internet, and I so admire her because she has decided as a physician that she's going to work part-time, that she only needs a certain amount of money for the lifestyle that she wants. She's very involved in the outdoors, hiking and climbing, things like this. But I asked her, how did you realize at such a relatively young age that you didn't need all of the Mercedes-Benz kind of trappings that many physicians get caught up in? And she said that not long after high school, she had spent a year basically backpacking through South America. And she learned by living among tremendous poverty that money is not what brings happiness in life. And I thought that was profound. That I think we all know that instinctively, that money is not the source of happiness. Sometimes we may lose sight and forget that, but she learned in a very dramatic way at a very young age that money is not the source of happiness. And so she has been able to structure her life around that. And I so admire that, because as a physician, she could choose to work into her 60s, 70s, or 80s if she wanted, and kind of continue this part-time existence where she serves people on Medicare. And so she does in-home visits and all. And so I hope I'm not saying too much here, but again, I just so admire this woman because of the choices she's made. And all of us have that same privilege to some degree. How much is enough? I'm fortunate. I'm at a point in my career where I make a lot more money than I did when I was much younger. But the truth is, the things that bring me satisfaction now it's walking. I like to be in museums and in the library, particularly the library. I go to events at the university that, performances that are not terribly expensive, and I ride my trike. So it's not like I don't have really expensive habits where I'm cruising 6, 7, 8 times a year, which is fine for those who can afford it and who like to do that. Mm-hmm. But what I'm saying is we each get that same privilege that Matt LeBlanc is talking about. Perhaps not on his scale. We don't make $20 million a year, but we do get to decide how much do we need. And when we hit that point, we're truly at that work optional lifestyle that I speak so much about. That's our primary goal with our clients. We want you to get to a work optional lifestyle, Matt LeBlanc, Joey style, whatever you want to call it, so you can live the life that is so meaningful for you. Let's see what you really need to be happy.
Investment advisory services offered through Golden Years Financial LLC, a registered investment advisory firm. Insurance is offered through Golden Years Insurance Services. These firms do not provide legal or tax advice. Consult your own legal and tax advisors before taking actions that may have tax implications. Investing in securities involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Insurance contracts principal protection is based on the claim-paying ability of the respective insurer. None of the information contained on this website shall constitute an offer to sell or solicit to buy a security or insurance product. The information and opinions contained on this site or requested from this site are provided by third parties believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. They are provided for informational purposes only and are not a solicitation to buy or sell any of the products mentioned. Any media logos and or trademarks contained herein are the property of their respective owners, and no endorsement by those owners of Mark Cordner, Golden Years Financial, or Golden Years Insurance is stated or implied.